Okay, hello everybody. Some of you may have noticed a couple of weeks ago now that we did a Solicitors Wanted promotion on LinkedIn, where we wanted solicitors to apply to win a new Dragon Legal Anywhere license, along with all of the training, technical support. And Alicia here is our winner. Thanks for coming by, Alicia.
Thanks.
No worries. So the aim of today, really, Alicia hasn't got Dragon yet. Now she's had her IT check and everything is good. So before we go ahead and set her up, we kind of wanted to touch base, see where she is now, and then hopefully in a few weeks' time, or maybe a month or so, we can see how Dragon has really changed that, and especially more so your workflow.
Yeah.
So I've got a few questions for you today. And the main one being, would you like to just introduce yourself, mainly, your job role, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I'm Alicia from Emmerson Solicitors, and I work in family and private client. So I do sort of a mix of both, about 50-50 across the two. And I've been qualified just over a year. So I've been doing both of them sort of departments since then. And hoping to make my life a little bit more easier.
Definitely. That's the aim of the game.
Yeah.
So can you give us a little bit of a background on Emerson's as a firm? How many employees have you got? Is there, a specific area as a firm that you focus on, or do you do a bit of everything?
Yeah, so the firm sort of focuses on most high street areas of law. So we do a lot of conveyancing, so buying, selling houses, residential conveyancing and commercial conveyancing. We do family and private clients, so family only, private family work, so anything sort of child arrangements, divorce, separation. And then private client, we do sort of wills, last and powers of attorney, probate, court of protection. We also have a crime department. We have two offices, so Gosforth is sort of family and private client and conveyancing, and then Sunderland is family, private client and crime. There's about 20 or so employees, I would say, and it's been around for over 20 years. So it's quite well established in both Sunderland and Gosforth. So yeah, that's a bit about the company, really.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. So it was actually your colleague Lee who entered you in for winning the Solicitor Wanted promotion that we were running.
Yeah.
Why do you think this is? What made him put you forward?
I think because we do a lot of different things. So in family and private client, there's a lot more varied things. So it's going to be a lot more beneficial for me than it possibly would for conveyancing, because they do a lot of sort of the same transactions generally. Whereas family is a lot of like bulky bits of work, especially so if you're doing sort of reports, statements, things like that, or even emails are probably a lot longer. Same with private client. A lot of like attendance notes and things like that are going to be like quite significant, a lot bigger than what you tend to find in conveyancing generally. So hoping that it'll be me that'll get the most out of it, fingers crossed.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting to understand a bit of the background. So what kind of daily tasks does your role entail? If we look at like a standard day in your life, what would that kind of include?
Lots of emails, especially at the minute with COVID, we have a lot less sort of in-person appointments, so a lot of things are done through email. And then sort of depending on how the day goes, generally quite a few appointments, both family and private clients. So it might be like a will appointment to go through that with a client. And then after the call, I'll have to then type the notes, and then draft the will, do anything else sort of in relation to that, really. Family wise, it sort of depends on what the appointment is. If it's sort of to do with a divorce, then it might be sort of doing initial letters to the other side, doing like an initial letter to the client, and then like drafting a divorce petition. So there's lots of different things, just dependent on sort of what needs doing that day, or what appointments we might have. So generally a lot of time on a computer. Or
Yeah.
there will be sort of, I do go out of the office quite a lot, either whether it's court, going to check probate houses, or like going through people's things if they've died and the whole house needs sorted, then it's sort of sorting all of that out. So in terms of sort of doing a note after those sorts of things, that can also be quite lengthy as well. So I think it will be quite useful.
Yeah, I think even listening to you speak then, it's just understanding the sheer volume of documentation you actually must create on a
Yeah.
daily basis. So that's really interesting because that's where we come in. So just wanted to understand a little bit about your current process in terms of capturing documentation. I mean, you mentioned obviously like the emails, the reports. Are you typing all of these by hand? Do you have a dictation system you're using?
No, I do just type generally everything. Some things there's like templates where you can use them and then tweak them, so that does save time. But generally speaking, sort of typing everything, which I do find quite fast. Like I wouldn't say I'm a slow typer or anything, but I don't have like a dictation or a dictaphone at the minute. So generally everything is pretty much typed, or as I say, the odd template here and there.
Okay. And do you have a secretary or anyone that helps you with that, or is purely all done by yourself?
Most of it's by myself. I do have like a secretary who does certain letters and things, but it's more so just as and when. It's not sort of me dictating to her. It's more so a note, and then she'll go and do that.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So she sort of knows what certain things need to go, what stages in a transaction, and she'll sort of do it as we go.
Sure. Okay. And when we're kind of looking at that process, I mean, let's focus on one thing particularly. So say if you were writing a report, like you mentioned, is quite common in your day, how long would you anticipate that would take you?
I mean, obviously it's dependent on what it is, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But I would say if I'm say doing a statement for something like an initial hearing or something, you can be talking like an hour
Right.
more, to be honest, depending on how complex it is, and sort of how far along you are with
Yeah.
it, because obviously an initial one's going to be a lot shorter than further along. But I'd say you're probably talking at least an hour to sort of do a statement.
Okay.
And like doing it and then going back and tweaking it and things like that, you can be talking sort of hours.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay. And you mentioned your emails tend to be a lot longer as well than Lee, for example. How long would you say, or how much of your day would you say is spent writing out emails?
You say maybe 2 hours, I would possibly say. Because generally I'll sort of do the emails in the morning, and then every time I'm picking up a file, I'm generally, well, every time updating the client at least, and then you can be, say, updating the other side on that. And then often I'll get an email back later that day for the same thing, so then deal with that again. So like if you think of you doing that on like 20 plus files a day at least, then yeah, jumps up quite a lot.
That's a lot of emails.
2 hours a day on emails, I would say, probably.
Okay.
But then you've got like possibly letters that you might draft and then send by email. So you've done the letter and then you still have to send the email with that letter as well.
Okay. And on average, I mean, I know it's so hard to probably generalize, but if you were to take a regular email that you would send, how would you guess long that would be in length? Does it tend to be a couple of paragraphs? Can it be, full on pages?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if it's not sort of like a quick email, like back and forward, I've actually done something on the file and then I'm updating the client and saying this is what you've got to do next, this is what we need to do, this is what we're waiting on. you're talking like sometimes majority of a page, like
Hmm.
an A4 page. Once you've printed it, I would say probably about a page. Some of them are shorter. It just depends really where you're at with it and how complex it is.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. And an important part for a lot of our existing clients is finding a solution that integrates with their case management system. So this is definitely something that we will look at for you. But what case management system are you using, if any?
Um, so at the minute we do have Law Fusion. I mean, there's a different one for conveyancing and for crime,
Yeah.
um, but we have like some systems in through Law Fusion. But generally at the minute, because I do both, it's just sort of creating Word documents within files
Hmm.
and doing it that way. Um, the case management system that we were using is currently being updated, so I'm not using that at the minute.
Hmm.
But that one was sort of a lot of pre-populated letters and things, more so for sort of probate, where it's more useful because you send out like a lot of emails and letters of the same sort of kind.
Yeah.
Um, but generally, sort of family-wise, it's nothing's pre-populated for you. It's more so creating the document yourself and doing it from there.
Hmm. And I
Um,
imagine that's a massive part, isn't it, of your role to have, obviously everything has to be up to date all the time because things are changing so quickly.
and you can't really rely on a president all the time because every file's different. So then even if you do it, it's better sometimes to just start from scratch anyway, because then you're going to change so much of it that it bears no relevance anyway. So it's sort of a waste of time.
Yes.
I mean, obviously there are times when it is useful to do that, but it's not always practical, really.
Yeah, definitely. Are there any cons or problems that you can identify with your current workflow? So with the typing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the sheer amount of time it takes in terms of sort of typing, then making a mistake, going back, correcting it, like back forward,
Mhm.
back forward, um, which I believe will sort of correct it to a degree. And that obviously, if you're talking, it picks up the word rather than me just typing fast and then missing it and having to go back. Um, it's more so, I suppose, repeating myself, like doing things repetitively over and over again. It seems like you're just wasting time because you could have just done it way quicker had you
Yeah.
either spoken it or maybe um, done the same thing. But as I say, it's not necessarily just being able to copy and paste something because you can't. It's still different in some way. It's just sort of
Yeah.
thing over and over again sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, so I'd say that's probably the main thing. Really, it's just like errors in things, or the repetitiveness of the same thing over and over again.
Hmm. Okay. And I mean, obviously that's kind of like a con, shall we say, but is there anything that, isn't a massive problem within your role? It maybe it's quite quick to do, but is there something that you just don't like doing? It's not necessarily a huge task, but it's just something, a part of your job where you're just like, oh, I have to do that
Yeah.
now.
Notes after every call and things like
Yeah.
that. That does take up a lot of your time when you think, I know in my head what's happened, so I don't need to put a note, but obviously you have to have a note on your file so that
Yeah.
someone else picks it up, or if I'm not here, if I'm on holiday, or even just for a record of if you go back in a month and think, oh, actually, did I say that? You've
Hmm.
got the note, but it's just, it seems so time consuming at the time because I've literally just had the call and now I'm
Definitely.
writing what I've just said and I'm typing it and it's like 15 minutes it's took or whatever,
Hmm.
which is like a thankless task because I know I will remember it, but it's just
Yes.
you don't know when you're going to rely on it in the future again.
Yeah, definitely. It might be fresh now, but it's not always in a couple of months' time.
Forget the week after, to be fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like that. My memory's awful. Okay. And you mentioned that you do have a secretary that helps you with some aspects of your role. Is there anything that you can think of that they could be better spending their time doing? If they weren't carrying out, typing certain things for you, is there anything they could be using their time doing in a better way, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, there's always things that can be done anyway.
Mhm.
even like answering the phone, speaking to clients generally, or like chasing things up, things like that, where they could still be doing it even if they weren't doing sort of things like that, like doing general letters where it's just this is what's happened, or if it's like closing files where you've then got to send that closing letter and things like that. It's again repetitive, but it has to be done because it's just sort of nature of the job, really. But there's definitely other things, as I say, speaking to clients, answering the phone, dealing with other general things that otherwise might not get dealt with because there's more urgent things, really.
Definitely, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the future for you guys.
Yeah.
A main thing and quite a common thing that we get as a supplier of Dragon is a lot of preconceived ideas or maybe memories of people that have used Dragon in the past, 20 odd years ago, and they remember that, oh, the accuracy wasn't as bad. There's a lot of preconceived ideas about Dragon, especially within the legal industry. So I just wanted to tap in and see whether you have ever heard anything about Dragon, whether you'd used it, and if you've got any preconceived ideas going into this.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't used it personally myself, but I've heard other legal professionals talking about it and saying, oh, like you say, I used it years and years ago and wasn't as accurate, or it didn't pick things up as quickly. But I mean, think of how much things have changed in 20 years. Like, obviously things are gonna have got a lot better. So yeah, I think that there is things like that. I have heard people saying, oh, it wasn't, as you say, as accurate as you thought, or I was using it, but then it was like errors, having to then rectify the errors. But I think now you can sort of, it learns, doesn't it, from the errors that you make. And so then obviously if you're doing it once, it's not every single time you're going to have to keep rectifying the same error over and over again. So yeah, hopefully it's come a long way, I would imagine.
It has, but it is funny how experiences like that do stick with people, because we get it all the time. But as you say, things have come on leaps and bounds, and hopefully you'll find that out for yourself over the next few weeks. Just coming on to the last few questions now. Main thing I wanted to know is, what are you hoping to achieve by using speech recognition? A lot of common wins that our clients experience is more time. They get to actually go home on time, or actually get time to eat their lunch, or it might be money. You wanting to use your time more effectively and save money for the firm. Is there anything really that you're really hoping Dragon will do for you?
Yeah, I think it's more the time saving, like things that could be a lot quicker would just be so much easier if things could be like halved in time, or even if you shaved off a bit of time off each thing.
Yeah.
You're going to be so much more productive. Like that's what I'm hoping most is, as I say, saving time, but also in saving time, if it's taking me less time to do things, it's then sort of saving the client money, because they're not paying for something that would otherwise take you a lot longer.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that generally most solicitors, it's on a time spent basis. So if you can do that, then obviously you're saving the client money as well as the firm. So it's a win-win situation, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of one thing of time can also link into so many other things. Like, a lot of people found that having that time is making them a lot less stressed, better work-life balance. So that's the kind of things we really want to hopefully help you achieve. So that's really interesting, and hopefully when we check in a few weeks, we'll start seeing those results. So that's everything I really wanted to ask you. For everyone else that is watching, we're going to be having these catch-ups quite regularly, seeing how Alicia's getting on. The next step is to install the software for her. We're going to order her license, get her headset sent out, and hopefully once she's had some training, we can check in, see how it's going, and we will be sure to post it to the socials for you guys to watch. So thank you very much, Alicia, for joining me. Hopefully I didn't embarrass you too much.
Oh, that was fine.
Good, that's what we like. Okay.